Dear audience, welcome to the show POWERchat. In today's episode, we are discussing about the issues of empowerment of girls and women in Nepal. Joining us today is Miss Maggie Doyne, an American philanthropist and also the founder of the BlinkNow Foundation, who has been supporting education, health and other access of girls and women in Nepal for a long time. Please allow me to welcome her. Welcome to the show, Miss Doyne.
Thank you for having me.
How have you been?
Really good.
Well, you have been in Nepal for many years.
I have.
12, 13 years, supporting here with women and girls, education and all. And you were also awarded with the CNN Hero of the Year, 2015. How do you assess the overall situation of women and girls in the context of Nepal?
Yeah, so when I first came to Nepal, I was 19 years old, and kind of just by chance, I ended up in northeastern India. And it was there, actually, in India, that I started to understand the plight of women and children, because during the conflict era, a lot of women and children were fleeing the country, and even now, until today, working as migrant workers. And so my introduction to Nepal was actually in northeastern India because, as you know, a lot of people from the Midwest of Nepal, Karnali, the far west, go to that region in order to work. So I was meeting Nepali families as refugees.
In India?
Correct, yeah, in the Uttaranchal area. And so I started to kind of get a glimmer of the life, and that kind of made me ask my first questions, which was, why are these women and children from Nepal coming to India, sleeping on the side of the road, living in these conditions, working as migrant workers? And that was my introduction to Nepal, and I decided from then and there that I really wanted to go, and I really wanted to take a trip, and I wanted to understand the situation in Nepal.
What are the changes occurred during these all years, 12 plus years you are here?
Yeah, so this was in 2005 and 2006. It was an armistice time, and I wanted to go to the Karnali region, and that's where I knew a lot of these beautiful, amazing Nepalese people were coming from. So I went there, and it was on that trip that I was crossing over a dry riverbed, and I saw many, many children, mostly girls, breaking rocks. And you can imagine just the emotion that I felt, and that we all felt, I think, as human beings, seeing children as little as 4 and 5 and 7 years old breaking rocks for a living. And it was kind of at that point where I started to understand the plight of girls and women, the lack of access to education, the lack of equal rights. And it was also kind of as the conflict was coming to an end, so it was a huge time for the start of development. And when I met those young girls, I really decided, and I knew that the solution was to try to get them access to education.
And you established with the Children's Home and Women's Center, also a school in Surkhet.
Yeah, so I have a co-founder. His name's Top Bahadur Mullah. He was also an orphan, and his family was really critical in setting up an NGO. So we learned a lot. We started by enrolling rock breaker girls into school, and then that slowly evolved into many, many projects and programs working to uplift the community from a grassroots level.
What motivated you to come Nepal?
Well, I think at first it was seeing the conditions in India and realizing, like, we have to get to the source of the problem. Why should children and women have to flee their own countries and work in this way in Nepal? And then it was the children, and seeing, and the people, and seeing all of the opportunity and just the light in their eyes. And I've just felt a sense of hope. It was such an interesting time to be in Nepal and rebuilding and kind of envisioning what Nepal could be if its girls and women were educated.
What are the key challenges associated with women's or girls' education or their access to any state facilities in comparison to the urban girls and women, and the girls or women in Karnali province or far western province that you are basically working with?
Yeah, so I would say in 2005 to 2007, even 2008, the issue that we saw and felt was really access. Girls were not enrolled into school at the same rate as boys. Women were not having the same opportunities as their counterparts because they hadn't had access to education. If you met a woman really age 20, 25 and above, there was very little chance that she was literate, that she could write her own name. And then I'd say in the last decade, what I've seen is that it's no longer an issue of access. The rates of enrollment of girls into primary school are actually historic. They're the highest they've ever been. But it's now moving into an issue of quality. The educational quality that we are delivering is just not up to standard, where we can find girls in rural areas who can't even write a sentence, and there aren't teachers in the classrooms, there aren't adequate materials, the curriculum's not being delivered. So I think it's a really positive shift that we've gotten the access where it's come. I think we're at like 94% in Nepal. I think the next challenge of our time will be quality.
What are the positive things that you have delivered through these initiatives?
Well, I think just making sure that girls and women in our community have access to their most basic needs and fundamental rights. So we have opened up a women's empowerment center. We've opened up a psychosocial counseling center for women and girls and our constituents to have access to, because in the Midwestern region, one of the leading causes of death amongst women of childbearing ages is actually suicide. So to address that issue, we've been working on mental health and creating a community of support. We also offer really quality education. We don't believe in just enrolling kids into school. We really look at the whole child approach. What does a girl need to thrive? She needs to have arts and music and the ability to play on a soccer or football team, and really loving teachers, other women who believe and invest in her and mentor her. So we kind of took that whole child, whole woman approach, and through our women's center and through our programs are able to give these girls and women everything they need to thrive and grow and become change makers.
Could you also tell us, Ms. Doyne, the specific needs of girls at school?
Yeah, I think girls, they need a little bit of investment and then they do the rest. But from what I've seen in the Midwestern region is that, they need a school lunch. We have to feed our children and our kids. So we have a nutrition program. They need access to basic medical care. They need education about their body, about their human rights, about, how to prevent from trafficking or child marriage on the extreme, but then also how to be empowered and strong in their own selves. So I'd say the biggest thing that we can provide to our young women in the world and in Nepal is empowerment and a strong sense of self.
Do you think that the existing societal or cultural practices and the laws related to ensuring access to health, especially that of the girls and adolescents, are women rights friendly, girls right friendly, and what specific measures should be taken? Now Nepal is going through drafting of different new laws, and you are working in Karnali province. How do you assess the situation there?
To be honest, I'm very positive. I'm very positive about the changes that I've seen from decentralization. Now we have elected government officials who are from the region, who care, who are invested. The outlawing of chowpatty and really coming down strict on that culturally makes me really hopeful. The investment and development dollars into girls and women's development projects. In Surkhet itself, where we work, we have 10 tuk-tuk drivers who are women. That's unprecedented. For the last 15 years in Nepal, I've never seen a female driver. So I think it'll start with these little wins until they become the cultural norm. A few women standing up against chowpatty will eventually become thousands, and then villages, and then we'll shift to the cultural norm and less fear around menstrual taboo. So I think that's one thing. I think we do need to shift our public health crisis towards the mental health challenges that we're seeing amongst women. Overall, in the context of the Karnali region, though, I'm really positive. I mean, maternal deaths are the lowest they've ever been. Neonatal deaths are the latest they've ever the lowest they've ever been. Girls are enrolled into school at higher rates than we've ever seen before. These fights that the development world has been fighting are working, and the outcomes are proven. And it's not only development, it's government, it's the people themselves, it's the democracy that's been created and fought for over the last 10 years. So overall, as a person kind of on the front lines, I'm positive. Do we have a lot more to go? Yes, we have a lot more distance to go.
Very impressive figures you presented with, but there are, media coverage and stories in media that women in Karnali province, a far western province, they die just because they don't have access to health care during the time of pregnancies and all. What are your suggestions to the provincial and federal government of Nepal to ensure the reproductive or health rights of women and girls? Adolescents?
Yeah, great question. I think you're right. Like, as far as we've come, there are still things that are happening that we can improve. And I think my advice would be to look at what's working. We know now from the last 10 to 15 years, development-wise and government initiative-wise, what is working, what has been successful. So let's look at those models, those hospitals, those PPP models, those nonprofit models that are working, and then try to take those to scale. One of our partners, a lot of our partners are in NGOs that we really admire are doing things that are working. There's One Heart that are launching birthing centers. There's Possible Health, a hospital in rural Acham that has better outcomes than anywhere in the country. So I think we have to stay hopeful. We have to look at what's working and go in that direction and try to move away from our older development models that maybe are failing.
Could you also tell us about the BlinkNow Foundation? How did you start it, and what do you do through this organization?
Yeah, so I'm a Westerner. I'm from America originally, but a lot of me has grown up here. I'm a little hesitant being the one in front of the camera because our team is of 120 Nepalese, and we're pretty Nepali run. We have a Nepali-based board as well. But BlinkNow is about changing the world in the blink of an eye, and that we can all become change makers and learners and make the world a better place. And we do that through our implementing partner, Kopala Valley School, Kopala Valley Seva Samaj. And it's basically about just every single child making sure that they're safe, educated, loved, nurtured, so that we can build a better Nepal through this next generation of amazing children.
What, according to your experience, that Nepal should invest upon in relations to education of children, both girls and boys here in Nepal?
Well, I think, first of all, we need to see our children as the most valuable resource. The most valuable natural resource that we have is our children, and to really nurture them and take care of them and make sure that they have their basic needs met. And the basic needs and rights of the child are education and quality education. So I think giving our children pride in where they come from, that they can really be proud of their place, of their culture, of their heritage, and build a curriculum around that, but also exposure to things that, will make them world citizens and able to compete on the global scale. And that means getting our education system, public, private, Guti, everything up to standard, up to an international standard that we can be proud of. That, I have a biological daughter, Ruby. I want her to be able to go to public school in Nepal. So I think we have to keep raising the bar. We have to keep challenging ourselves as an educational system in Nepal. And I think with the right advocates at the government and development level, we can get there.
Well, how do you support to these all initiatives through the BlinkNow Foundation and other initiatives around? What are the key working modalities with these initiatives? So
we basically do a lot of our fundraising. We're month to month. We have a lot of Nepalese donors who support our work, our mission, our initiatives, and then we have the incredible partnership of our Nepali Kopala Valley Seva Samaj board, our co-founder Tope. We have a strategic plan that's guiding us through the next 10 years with the hopes to improve education across Karnali and the Midwestern region.
What are your students? I mean, those who were admitted to these schools in Surkhet.
Yeah.
Where are they at the moment that they were admitted as the first batch that you sent to these schools?
Yeah, so the first group of our graduates are, over 85% of them are off into college and university. A few of them have opted to go abroad. Some of them are in university in the local region itself. Others are doing vocational skills training. Others are working. And some are in Kathmandu, here in Kathmandu, studying. And it's definitely proven in the face of our children that this model really works. They're doing incredible things. They're becoming doctors, engineers, teachers, educators. It's been an amazing 10 years watching them grow up and kind of go to college and live the dreams that we've had for them.
Well, you explained with very impressive figures on how you worked here in Nepal, but still there is a gap between, the elite people you were mentioning about the public school and access and all.
Mm-hmm.
How can this, gap be narrowed down at least?
Well, I'm a big believer in philanthropy and giving back, and the model of equality means that the people at the top who have the privilege, who have the opportunity, who are free, who are safe, who are educated, really have a duty and a responsibility to look after the weakest members of the society, the most vulnerable. So I think as a Nepal, as a world, the elite, the fortunate, the lucky, the ones who have, won that birth lottery, gotten those golden tickets, really have to find it within themselves to give back to those in need. And I think when everyone takes those action steps, starts giving back, investing their time, their energy, their love, their actual finances, we can start to flip this, this disparity that we're seeing between, these huge gaps between the rich and the poor. And, a thriving society, a thriving population is good for everybody. Women being empowered is good for the GDP, it's good for the elite, it's good for the middle class, it's good for everyone. A country is only as strong as its weakest members.
Despite these all initiatives, why there is, violence or discrimination against women and girls in Nepalese society? What is your observation?
Well, I think it comes down to old patriarchal ways of thinking. And I think, we have to work on developing a new kind of way of thinking that sees men and women as truly equals. That starts in the home and moves into the community, moves into the cities, and then the country as a whole. And I think this new generation of boys and men are starting to see feminism and equality in a new light. And we've got a lot of work to do. Violence against women is still a major issue. We see it every day in our projects and in our programs. But
don't you think that violence against women and girls continuing due to the state of impunity?
I do. I think it's a lot of reasons. I think there are old ways of thinking that are not based on science or reality, but that need to change. And I think Nepal is ready for that change, and I'm just waiting for it to happen. Like, when I first came here, I felt like I saw a lot of abuse amongst women, and it was like accepted. I remember someone said to me, "But Maggie, everyone beats their wife. You just have to accept that." And I think over the last 10 years, it's been like, no, it's a shameful thing. To be violent towards a woman is shameful. To abuse a girl is shameful. And I think that shift in mindset and thinking is happening. I choose to stay hopeful about it.
How do you compare children in Western countries, say in the United States and here in Nepal, in relations to, their access to education, health and all?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a disparity between the Western culture and Nepali culture. I think in the West we have better access. We have a bit higher quality of public education, although the West definitely has its struggles. But I think Nepal has a lot going for it in a sense. You know, Nepalese children are still outside playing. They're still out in nature. They're still, you know, really connected to family and community. And there's values that we have here in Nepal that we need to make sure that we try to preserve as well. It's not just about trying to become like the West, because the West has a lot of things that Nepal should not desire and to be. So I think we have to find this balance of preserving the good things about a Nepali childhood, but also making sure that we're up to standard when it comes to things like education and health.
What is your message to the young youths and adolescents of this country?
Oh, I think there's nothing that gives me more hope than this next generation of up-and-coming Nepalese children, youth. I'm inspired by everything that's happening and the fights all across the country for good and for betterment and for preservation. And I'm hopeful, and I think we have to join hands, work together, and really stay hopeful and hold each other and lift each other up as we make Nepal all that it can be and all that it's ever been.
Well, Ms. Doyne, there are many interesting issues you are sharing with us, but we are coming to the end of the show. Any specific thing that you want to share to our audience that I have left to ask you very quickly?
Oh, I'd love for everyone to follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram. We're BlinkNow.org, the BlinkNow Foundation.
Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank
It was
you.
a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for having me, sir.
Dear audience, time now to wrap up the show. Keep watching us. See you next week. Namaste.